billionaire businessman named Richard Rich joyfully declares the birth of his son named Richie to the servants in his mansion. All of them rejoice and celebrate, including Richard's loyal butler named Herbert, who was entrusted with raising Richie from the day he left the crib. As for Richard, he has a vast business empire and works countless hours in his office. However, Richard never let his demanding job stop him from spending time with his son. Being great at multitasking, Richard always makes time to play catch with his kid while making important business phone calls in his office. Because of that, Richie developed a keen interest in baseball. As the years went by and after some good coaching, Richie's baseball skills became extraordinary. Since Richie is such a bright and capable kid, his father gives him some small responsibilities. One of those small responsibilities is to attend the reopening of the United Tool Factory on behalf of his father, who bought it after it went bankrupt. This generous act saved the livelihoods of many factory workers who were about to become jobless. As the ceremony begins, Richie sees a group of kids his age playing baseball nearby and feels the need to make some new friends. He then delivers a small speech and accepts a thank you award from the factory workers on behalf of his dad.
On behalf of my dad, thanks for the wrenches.
Following the ceremony, Richie is about to approach those kids to play with them when suddenly the head of security, named Ferguson, strictly pulls him away. He tells Richie it's not safe, but Herbert interrupts. He nicely convinces Richie to get in the helicopter and forbids Ferguson from being too rough with the kid. Richie comes back home to be welcomed by his dog named Dollar. Richard is also back from his business trip. He catches up with his wife named Regina, and to his surprise, Regina had an artist carve a big family portrait on a nearby mountain using a laser gun. Richie then welcomes his dad and talks about the details of the ceremony he attended on his behalf, but the conversation is interrupted when Richard gets a call from the President of the United States. As for Richie, it's time for his chemistry class with a professor named Keenbean. In his laboratory, Keenbean is working on some new inventions, the latest of which is a big machine called the Reorganizer. Keenbean shows him his other mind-blowing inventions, like the strong adhesive that can glue any object whatsoever, including a human being. There is also a solution that can make any fabric or clothes bulletproof.
I call it cementia!
Moreover, there's also a robotic bee that can pollinate flowers better than any natural bee. As Richie takes it for a test flight, he has it fly near Herbert to poke fun at him. Mistaking the robotic bee for a fly, Herbert kills it immediately. Since millions of dollars have been spent to invent this bee, Keenbean gets mad at Richie and chases him throughout the lab. At night, an unexpected guest named Lawrence arrives to grace the Rich family with his presence. Aside from being an arrogant man, Lawrence is Richard's biggest partner in the company. While Lawrence has dinner with Richard, Richie sits alone at the other side of the table. He doesn't like Lawrence and neither does his mother. However, since this is a business meeting, she has to have dinner with this unbearable guest and deal with him. As the adults start talking about business, Lawrence points out that the generous donations and charity work cost the company $1 billion. For this reason, he suggests that they stop giving away their money. Richard loves to use his money to help those in need, so he rejects Lawrence's suggestion. He also clarifies that the reason he bought out the United Tool Factory is to save the livelihoods of its workers. To this, Lawrence suggests getting rid of this factory, since it's a dead weight and it won't be generating any income for the company. Richard finds this a good idea, but instead of selling the factory, he decides to supply it with modern tools and then give it away to the workers, free of charge. Keenbean walks in to introduce his new invention.
May I present the Smell Master?
It's a small machine called the Smell Master, and it can identify any object by recognizing its smell. While Lawrence rolls his eyes, Richard is excited by the new and novel machine that he has his son try it out. Surprisingly, the small machine identifies the smell of the drink Lawrence is having and recognizes it as wine. Lawrence doesn't like any of Keenbean's inventions. He calls them toys and excuses himself to leave. As Richard and Regina see him out, Lawrence suggests that Richard enhance his security security system. Richard says there's no need for that, as all of the family's wealth is safely locked in a big secret vault. Hearing the words wealth and vault, Lawrence becomes curious about where this vault is and what's in it. And as he leaves, it becomes clear from his big evil grin that he has some sinister intentions. The next morning, Richie wakes up and puts his smart clothes on.
Good morning, sir. It's time.
He then activates his GPS computer, which he calls the Dad Link. Through this computer, Richie can find out the location of his dad wherever he is around the world. As it turns out, Richard is at the White House when Richie calls him. He interrupts his father's meeting with the president, only to ask about a pimple that appeared on his face. Since this is not the time to talk about pimples, Richard tells his son that he'll talk about this later. Richie then goes to his private school. Unlike normal kids, Richie and the other rich kids like him study how big companies work and how to organize finances. They even study market shares and profits.
How would you get the board on your side?
Bribe someone.
During fence class, Richie decides to stop talking about money and business. He wants to bond with his two best friends, Reynolds and Ellsworth. He asks them to come over to his house so they can all play, have some fun, and hang out just like normal kids. However, neither Reynolds nor Ellsworth can join him since they also have promising plans and busy business schedules of their own. Following his day at school, Herbert tells Richie about his schedule for the weekend, and as it turns out, Richie is going to England to meet the Queen, along with his parents. However, Richie is not interested in this. He only wants some friends to hang out with, and since his Latin class has been cancelled, Richie heads to the United Tool Factory, where he meets up with the group of kids he saw earlier. Richie asks them if he can join them for a game of baseball, but the kids don't like Richie. They all say no, assuming Richie is just another spoiled kid who can't hit a beach ball. However, they all change their minds when Richie proposes a bet.
Not 10,000. $10.
On his first try, Richie trips and fails miserably, and all the kids laugh at him. However, when the girl named Gloria throws the ball the second time, Richie hits it and breaks the factory window to win the bet. Herbert is happy for this victory, while Richie invites the kids to play with him at the mansion. However, the kids are not interested. Gloria orders the kid named Pee-wee to give Richie the bet, since he won. Upset about the loss, Gloria tells Richie to take the money and leave. She calls him an outsider and tells him the factory backyard is not the place for him to play baseball. Hurt, Richie leaves without taking the money. At the weekend, the rich family is going to travel to England to meet the Queen. While the plane is being loaded with luggage, along with the Queen's gifts, Ferguson plants a red box while pretending to be doing a security check. Regina finds out that one of the gifts is the Smell Master. This comes as a bit of a surprise to her because the Smell Master is too valuable to give away, but Richard brushes it off. He thinks the Queen will enjoy having such a new device. Richie goes to sit inside the plane, visibly sad. When she notices that, Regina asks what's bothering her beloved kid. Herbert informs her about how her son tried to make some friends and failed at it. For this reason, Herbert suggests that Richie stay with him since he knows how to cheer him up. He reasons that Richie finds business-related stuff boring. Regina finds this suggestion brilliant. Seeing the rich family inside the plane, Ferguson is confident that his mission as a bodyguard is done.
I hope you and your family have a great time.
To entertain Richie, Herbert invites a woman named Diane, along with her daughter, Gloria, and her friends, to the mansion later that day. Seeing the gigantic house, Gloria and her friends marvel at its beauty, while Richie is so happy to see the kids who didn't want to play baseball with him yesterday.
I've seen bigger.
As the fun starts, Richie takes them on a tour inside the mansion. He takes them to the small McDonald's restaurant that's been built inside his home. After having lunch, Richie then introduces the others to the catapult. The kids then ride quad bikes in the vast villa. During this time, Herbert is showing Diane around the mansion when the two almost get run over by the little brats. Meanwhile, Richie rests under the tree and talks to Gloria as the other kids are riding in the lake. Richie invites them to ride the roller coaster with him. Meanwhile, Lawrence is sitting in his office. As he guesses where Richard's plane might be right now, he becomes convinced that Richard is not coming back, for which reason he decides to move to his office. At this point, Richard and Regina have been flying the plane for hours. Richard longs for a good mug of coffee. Regina tells him not to steal from the chocolate because it's reserved for the English Queen. Richard assures her he's on a diet and pretends to be going for some coffee, but he then grabs the Smellmaster and looks for the chocolate when suddenly the Smellmaster detects a suspicious substance inside one of the boxes. Just as Richard tells his wife about what this substance is, she becomes alarmed and tells her husband to open the box, only to find there's a ticking bomb inside it. The couple freaks out and throws it out of the window. However, the bomb explodes and damages the back of the plane, causing it to lose its balance and crash. At the same time, Lawrence is sitting at Richard's office and has a drink, confident that Richard will not come back. During this time, the tour at the rich mansion is brought to an end. Gloria and her friends thank Richie for the great time they had before leaving. Just then, Richie receives a phone call and gets the news about what happened to his parents' plane. Richie rushes to his room, where he uses the dad link to find his dad's location. Sadly, there's no signal. After the news about Richard's disappearance breaks, Lawrence is celebrating when Ferguson walks in. He tells Lawrence that Richie wasn't with his parents inside the plane. Since Richie is Richard's only heir, he will inherit his wealth, company, and assets. Hearing this, Lawrence is pissed. He decides to get rid of Richie the same way he got rid of his parents. As news reports come in about the rich couple's disappearance, it's revealed that a sea search has been made to find them. Even though no one knows the couple's fate, Richie is sure that his parents are alive. He just knows it.
You're alive, Cadbury. I know it.
Fortunately, Richie turns out to be right when it's revealed that Richard and Regina survived. However, they're on a lifeboat in the middle of the ocean, waiting for someone to come to their rescue. To contact his son through the dad link, Richard decides to fix his phone after the crash damaged it, hoping that it might receive a signal. As for Regina, she is convinced that Lawrence had the bomb planted inside the plane to have her killed along with her husband. After all, Lawrence is the only one capable of doing so. Meanwhile, Lawrence becomes the acting chairman of the company.
A moment of silence on the tragic passing.
In his first act, he decides to shut down the United Tool factory while carelessly smoking a cigar. Richie finds out about this when he gets a call from Gloria, since her mother works there. Richie assures her that he has nothing to do with it. He also promises to fix it. For this reason, Richie heads to his father's office along with Herbert. Since he's Richard's only heir, Richie tells Lawrence that he is taking over the company until his parents return.
My parents are alive.
Lawrence scoffs at the idea and tells Richie that running a company is a demanding job, and a kid doesn't qualify for it. Lawrence suggests that Richie leave the job to an experienced adult. Richie says no and decides to stay, but Lawrence argues that this is illegal since Richie is a kid. Fortunately, Herbert is Richie's legal guardian. Thanks to that, he gives Richie the full power to officially run the company. Now that he's officially the boss, Richie decides to undo Lawrence's decision and reopen the United Tool factory. When Lawrence hears this, he becomes furious and storms off. Surprisingly enough, Richie does a great job at running the company. He also outshines Lawrence and earns the admiration of the employees. What's more, Gloria and her friends stop by to thank Richie for reopening the factory and saving the livelihoods of their parents who work there. Seeing his friends, Richie is delighted. Not only that, but Richie also appoints them as his new research and development team. Since Richie stole his thunder, Lawrence is pissed off. He resorts to Plan B. He tells Ferguson to execute it and make sure that nothing goes wrong this time. Shortly after, Ferguson comes back to the building with a group of policemen who falsely arrest Herbert on the charge of blowing up Richard's and Regina's plane.
You're under arrest for the murder of Richard and Regina Rich.
It then turns out that Ferguson secretly planted bombs and detonators inside Herbert's room to set him up. With Herbert out of the picture, the court allows Lawrence to be Richie's new legal guardian. Lawrence fires all of the servants working in it. Lawrence justifies to the public that they helped Herbert blow up the plane. Lawrence also has cameras installed to keep an eye on Richie.
You won't be going to the office anymore, Richie.
As for Richie, he starts feeling like a prisoner in his own home, so he decides to talk to Lawrence. During this time, Lawrence is playing pool with Ferguson, who tells him that their plan went as expected. However, Lawrence is is not quite satisfied. He hasn't found the family's vault yet. Lawrence believes there are billions of dollars in it and asks Ferguson about its location. However, Ferguson doesn't know since he's never seen it before. Unbeknownst to the two, however, Keen Bean is eavesdropping on them using one of his inventions. He is quite shocked to discover what Lawrence and Ferguson did to Herbert. He brings Richie to the lab to tell him everything. To break Herbert out of prison, Keen Bean introduces Richie to an acid that can melt almost anything, including prison bars.
Don't touch it!
The next day, Richie goes to the prison dressed like a normal kid for the first time in his life. Claiming that Herbert is his uncle, Richie delivers some items like toothpaste and a brush along with a note written in Latin. Since nothing is suspicious about these items, the guard allows them to be sent. After Herbert receives the items, he is about to brush his teeth when the toothpaste melts the brush. Only then does Herbert decide to read the Latin note to discover that his life is in danger. The note also tells him to melt the bars using the toothpaste to break free. Herbert is trying to understand what this note means when a biker hired by Lawrence tries to choke him to death. Herbert calls for help, but no one shows up. A fight then starts, but surprisingly, Herbert overpowers his attacker and knocks him out. He also melts the prison bars with the acid and escapes after he takes the biker's clothes. Herbert then reunites with Richie, who then shows him a headline from the newspaper. It turns out that his parents' plane was finally found. Much to Richie's joy, no bodies were discovered. This leads Richie to conclude that his parents are alive. To get in touch with his dad, Richie heads to Gloria's home and asks if he can use her computer.
Whoa, look who's slumming.
During this time, Richard manages to fix his phone using a hair trimmer along with one of Regina's earrings. Much to the couple's joy, the phone picks up the signal. The two then decide to get dressed, knowing that they'll soon be rescued. Interestingly enough, Richie knows how to hack. Through Gloria's computer, he manages to hack into the Dad Link computer at the mansion and power it up. However, one of Lawrence's guys sees what's happening. As they interrogate Keen Bean about the vault's location, Lawrence and Ferguson learn about what Richie is doing. Richie finds his parents' signal on the GPS and discovers that they are still alive. But before Richie can figure out their exact location, Ferguson disconnects the Dad Link in the mansion. He also tells Lawrence that the rich couple is still alive. Since he has no choice, Richie decides to sneak into his own home. Meanwhile, Richard and Regina are waiting in the boat for the rescue when a helicopter shows up to pick them up. Richard and Regina rejoice, thinking that Richie sent someone to rescue them. That night, Richie sneaks into the villa of his own home, along with Gloria and the others. To make their way inside the mansion, Richie and his friends bring out the catapult. They load it with heavy manure bags and knock the guard out cold. Making their way inside, Richie and his friends find the tied-up Keen Bean. After Richie unties him, he asks him to help them get to his room. To distract the guards, Keen Bean pours a chemical solution into the pipe and causes bubbles to come out of the front fountain, while Pee-wee and the others disconnect the surveillance cameras. This allows Richie to make it to his room unseen and check the Dad Link computer. Much to his surprise, Richie learns that his parents are in the mansion. Richie is more surprised to see that Lawrence has been waiting for him. Richie is also shocked to see his parents tied up in his bed. Things also take a turn for the worse when the guard captures Richie's friends. As Richie checks on his parents, they ask Lawrence what he's after and why he's doing all this. As it turns out, Lawrence wants the location of the vault and everything that's in it. Without any reluctance, Richard reveals the location of the vault to be hidden in the mountain. Lawrence decides to have the rich couple take him there and orders Ferguson to keep Richie with him. Ferguson then is taking Richie and the others to the lab when Keen Bean bags all of his inventions and hides. Ferguson then locks Richie and his friends inside the reorganizer.
Everybody in.
And turns it on to kill them all. Keen Bean uses his strong adhesive to glue a towel to Ferguson's face and distract him, but Keen Bean's knee lands on the adhesive and he becomes glued to the ground. Because of this, Keen Bean can't turn off the machine, but he uses his robotic bee and stings Ferguson in the butt, causing him to bump into the machine and turn it off by accident, thus saving Richie and his friends. Richie then decides to head to the mountain and save his parents. Walking hiking into the mountain, Lawrence gets to the vault. To unlock it, the couple sings a song. The system recognizes their voices and unlocks the door. When he walks inside, Lawrence discovers that there are only souvenirs and precious items that hold sentimental value to the rich family. Furious, Lawrence asks Richard where his money and assets are. Richard says they're safely stored in his bank accounts. Richard then states that he doesn't treasure money, but the time he spends with his family. Now that he failed to get what he wants, Lawrence is about to have his henchmen kill the couple when Richie appears to put a stop to his madness. He is sure that Lawrence doesn't have the guts to kill anyone. However, Lawrence decides to make an exception and kill Richie. Fortunately, Richie remains unharmed as the bullets fail to penetrate his clothes thanks to Kebian's bulletproof solution. To save their son, the rich couple attack Lawrence and his man. Before running out of the vault, Richard decides to close the door and lock Lawrence in. However, Lawrence makes it out and chases them. The couple escapes through one of their statues when Ferguson spots them. To kill them, Ferguson attacks them using the laser gun and damages the statues. Fortunately, Herbert attacks Ferguson and fights him while Richard swings his wife and kid into a safer spot to make sure they won't fall off. Ferguson overpowers Herbert and gets back to using the laser gun to kill the rich family. But luckily, Herbert knocks Ferguson out and uses the laser gun to attack Lawrence, who's been chasing the riches. This causes Lawrence to fall over and hang by a rope upside down. Fearing for his life, Lawrence begs and screams for help. Richard, who has never fired an employee in his life, decides to make an exception on this occasion and fire Lawrence. To teach Lawrence a lesson, Regina punches him in the face and knocks his lights out. With their enemy down, the rich family rejoices now that they survived this horrible experience.
Master Richie, well done!
Later, Richie's friendship with Gloria and the others becomes stronger. With Herbert as the coach, Richie plays baseball with his friends at his home's vast villa. By the end of the game, Richie hits a home run, and the ball is then picked up by Lawrence. Along with Ferguson, Lawrence does community service as a punishment and picks up garbage in the Villa of the Riches, which is the family he tried to kill. Now that he finally made some real friends, Richie feels fulfilled and is over the moon. Seeing their son happy, Richard and Regina are proud and on cloud 9. After all, it's not the money that the rich couple values as their wealth. Their true wealth is in the small moments and happy memories they create with their son.